I kind of spearheaded Bits and Pieces. By the way, this is Bits and Pieces number 16. Jason here, Will here. I kind of dropped the ball on that one. No one will ever know besides you and me, but kind of didn't do too good. Didn't do too hot.
Yeah, that was almost 2 years ago. I know we're also speaking a little softer. Are we doing our NPR voices today?
Yeah, in this Bits and Pieces, Will, as we sip our cold brew. And
son, we're going to go hot and heavy.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, you got to have to change that spike. So, one of the things that I have struggled with, as well as you will, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners probably has encountered an issue, is time. And time to watch anime or read manga has
just to do anything in general, man.
Oh no, yeah, like to balance life and everything.
It's just like you want to watch like 5 seasons of anime, but you only got like 8 hours a day if you choose not to sleep. You know, you got work, you got to eat, you got to shit, you got to shower,
and then rinse and repeat, right? So, I don't know about you, Will, but I think a lot of our fellow weeb and weebettes have a lot of on hold or a lot of plan to watch on their My Anime List or just on their minds, right? Of shows that they want to get to, but they can't really have to find the time, or new shows come in and out the door and you're just like, oh, I got to add this to the list, add that to the list. So I want to talk about the shows that are less spoken of. Because when it comes to the hype train shows, you know, your Demon Slayers, your Chainsaw Mans, and whatnot, those are generally pretty easy to recommend. And also, if people have not heard of Spy X Family or have not watched it, well, what are you doing? Then you get the other side, where you get the degenerate shows or the harem shows or the shows that are just laughable. Like, people watch it ironically, like X-Arm, so on and so forth. But what about not the mid shows, but the middling shows? The ones that we give kind of like a C+, B-, the 7 out of 10s that are not bad, but there are better shows to watch. I think it's one of those phrases that we repeat quite often on the podcast, like, hey, this show's all right. It's not a waste of your time, but it's not a good use of your time.
Look, I think that the issue that we will always face is every season there's at least like 40 shows.
At least, yeah.
Maybe like less than half of those you'll actually watch, and even like less than half of those you'll end up completing. So maybe like out of one season you'll end up finishing like 4, maybe 5 series, but you'll have 16 of them on hold, and you'll have like even more like, well, no, you have like 5 or 6 more that are like dropped.
Right.
I think the hard part is trying to juggle everything all at once, right? Like, yeah, sure, okay, if you go by the weekly schedule, not everything releases on the same day, right? So you might have like one show that comes out on the Monday, one show on a Tuesday, you might have 3 shows that come out on Saturday, and in that sense, you would generally be able to manage all of that. But the problem is not so much that you have the time to watch all these series. It's more the emotional and I guess also the mental capacity and stamina to keep up with every single one of them.
Right, because you and I are college students once, or when we had more time than sense.
When we didn't have like responsibilities.
Yeah, exactly.
Like paying taxes and working and
it's not
being a contributing member of society.
Now, not to say that as teenagers you do not have those responsibilities or do not have those on your mind, but it reminds me of because I haven't played video games in a long time, to be fair. And I think recently our group of friends have been trying to get together to play some video games together. And it made me realize, like, shit, I haven't actually played a video game like in a hard dedicated fashion in forever. And back then I used to play pretty much everything under the sun, whether it is the big AAA titles or like the indie darlings. But I would also play something like Silent Hill Homecoming or a game that is not bad as like a B tier type that doesn't aim to, maybe they have a lower budget, or maybe they're just not something that everyone gravitates to right away. And I would like to have a short, hopefully short, but probably not, discussion on the animes and mangas that fit into this category, because I read quite a decent amount of manga comparatively to before, but I can't tell you how many times those mangas are throwaway mangas that kind of soothe the soul or buy time, when there could equally be that time spent on a very good anime or a very good manga, a critical darling, or a popular anime series or manga series. And I just want to have a discussion with you on, as the age of, the average weeb could be increasing, also because the number of the population of anime fan base and manga fan base has increasing. But we also grow older. And of course, some people grow out of anime and manga, just like how some people grow out of video games. But they dabble every once in a while, right? So what do you do in that situation when you have an oversaturation of anime and manga? Because we talk about how mangas are now readily more accessible than ever before, simulcast, simulpub. We talk about how the proliferation of anime has increased ever so much. But we also talk about studio closures. We talk about people almost like from the get-go with the first episodes, like, they're not going to find an audience for this. But sure, you get like weird oddball curveballs that get a second season for no apparent reason, but you also get a lot of busts. And where do you find the time, or where do you even begin to choose these, I guess, for less better known term, B-tier anime and mangas?
I think let's take a step back first and focus on the issue at hand, which is time. Right?
Yeah.
So as we're getting older, and I'm sure this is something that you probably will agree with me as well, time is really precious. Right? We only have so many hours in the day when we're not sleeping, we're not working, we're not eating. And yeah, you can watch anime when you're eating too, but that's still like time that's used towards like fulfilling a gap, which is enjoyment.
Right.
Right? And so that's definitely what's happened now. Now that I have less time, or at least not so much less time, but I place more value on how I spend my time. Naturally, I'll gravitate towards things that I know that the time spent will have a good return in terms of the anime
Your
that
ROI.
I consume. Exactly, right?
And when we have more disposable income than ever before, a good example is I started to take the Hong Kong taxi, or rather than taking public transport all the way, I would, like a leg of it, take a taxi. And does that mean I spend a lot more money on average? Absolutely. But on the other hand, it's like that 45 minutes to 1 hour to me is way more important than the amount of money I would quote unquote save if I were to use public transport. Now, I know that not everyone has that luxury, and I also know not everyone would spend money towards saving, shaving off an extra half an hour or 45 minutes. But for me, I place more importance, as you said, on time, because I have a little bit of disposable income, so I decided to spend it on saving time.
Yeah. And then when you start talking about the whole like proliferation of anime and manga, and how like choices have never been more varied and wide now, right? There's like thousands of things you can check out at any minute, a click of a button, whether you're watching on your laptop or you're actually checking in on a TV or looking on your phone. I think that when you have so much to choose from, it actually makes things a lot harder for the consumer.
Yeah. I think especially nowadays, for example, airing right now would be like Farming Isekai, right? Farming Life in Another World, for example.
Yeah.
Or I think of Romantic Killer on Netflix. These are shows that, with Romantic Killer especially, I think it's a good show. Farming Isekai, I think is a decent show, but it's one of those another isekais. Of course, they add more to the table than your generic isekais, but it's kind of like I feel like I don't want to watch it, but I could be finishing Akiba Maid Wars.
Yeah.
I could be, maybe watching something that, what was the other Sugar Apple Fairy Tale that I think is really good, but instead, I either find it very hard to recommend it to people because they're okay. Give me the quick bangers. Give me like the 2 or 3 that is a must watch this season. Then I'll say things like, hey, have you watched Bocchi the Rock yet from a ways back? Or hey, have you checked out Chainsaw Man? Although chances are you've had checked Chainsaw Man. But for example, like Ayawashi, I think Ayawashi is a very critically adored show, both in terms of manga and in terms of the topics that they go through within the realms of soccer or football, right? But how do you even recommend that show over, let's say, a Hell's Paradise?
And that's the thing, right? Like, let's just talk about like winter, right? We're still in winter right now, and you have really good shows. Like you've got Bitey Daddies, you've got the second season of Tokyo Revengers, you've got Sarune out, you've also got Genius Lady.
Reincarnated Princess, Genius Lady, yeah.
Yeah. And then like, Farming Life Isekai, Cooking in Another World, all good shows. I'd say some of them really good shows. But would I watch those over a Vinland Saga Season 2 or a Season 4 of Bungo Stray Dogs? Absolutely not.
Yeah, and I'm not just talking about, what am I in the mood for, right? You could say, like, hey, maybe you're just into isekai trash right this moment just to kind of, because you don't want to be bogged down by the oppressive nature of Vinland Saga, or maybe you don't really want to focus too hard on something that is like a drama or romance or something that is a tragedy, where you will sob your eyes out. You just want something simple and plain that is anime that can soothe you for the time being, that can like temporarily satiate you, right? But I'm not talking about the in the moment mood. I'm talking about, let's say for argument's sake, Will, your plan to watch list, your whatever, is all wiped clean, and you just need to pick one anime. And of course, you could say then there's tons of shows that are,
and that's the problem there too, right? It's like there's like a million ways you can go about it. Okay, right. But which one is the correct way of going about it? Or which one is the best way of going about it?
Is there a correct way? Is there a best way? Or sometimes it's just, hey, throw a dart on a wall and see if it sticks. There's kind of thing.
There's 1,000 shows. Oh, I want to watch a shonen romance comedy. Okay, well, you got this show, you got that show, you got this show, you got that show. It's like, okay, I want one where it's more focused on the female lead than the male lead. Okay, well, you got like these shows, that shows, that shows. At that point, like, you start watering down things so specifically that even when you start watching that show, you actually may end up not liking it, and then you have to start backtracking.
Yeah, or it's stuff. Like, all right? Like, it's fine, but is it, again, going off of what you said earlier, a good ROI, a good rate of like a good return rate, right? And was it like 40, 50? Okay, even if we were to cut that down to, like, let's say 10 shows, right? If we cut the number of sequels down, let's say there are 3 or 4 of the 10 shows, so then there will be like
six fresh shows.
6 fresh shows. Or these are the shows that would be on your radar or that you would be interested in. I'm not going to be able to watch all of them, and if I do, good. But then what about the shows that I put on hold or I plan to watch from last season or 3 years ago? Or, where do you... I find it on one way, anime is bigger than ever. Manga is licensed more than ever. Anime and manga is popular more so than ever. But on the other hand, rather than it being accessible, the oversaturation of it now has led to the point where people are going to lose their jobs because their animation studio shuts down. They are going to be spending time watching a bunch of shows and not watching other shows, or they watch it ironically. Then where does this middle ground lie?
It's hard. I think that, this is also from my own circle of friends too. Whenever they start talking about wanting to watch anime, they'll list the stuff that's like, Oh yeah, I can imagine you're watching Vinland Saga. I can imagine you're watching AOT and all that. And afterwards, like, oh, can you suggest me a new show to check out? And I'll just be, okay, well, why don't you check out this show? Why don't you check out Inspector? Or why don't you check out, like, Tsurune? You like sports. Why don't you watch something that's a little bit different from the regular sport? And they'll be like, I don't know. If I want to watch sports, then I'll watch Haikyuu. Or I'll watch Kuroko no Basket. It's like,
Yeah.
well, then what's the point in me suggesting you anything, right?
And that is to also assume that anime and manga consumes the majority of your media consumption, right? I tend to not really watch a lot of live action anymore, whether it is due to the fact that of my commitment to the podcast and the fact that I don't have that much time compared to back then. But if you are sort of the average adult that also takes an interest in anime but have it not be your sole focus,
Like maybe let's say maybe you only have like an hour and a half, 2 hours to watch anime every other day, right? Like how are you going to spend those 2 hours? How are you
Yeah.
going to go about picking a show and sticking with it? Or maybe after watching like an hour or two of a series, you've realized that was a waste of time and you just tune off. And
Yeah.
then that's when you start piling up the dropped list, the on hold lists.
the drop list is all right because I can feel like, oh, it just doesn't vibe with you, right?
But that's still time that was in ways wasted or not used wisely, right?
But you wouldn't
So-
know with dropped
True, but then
until you drop it. I mean,
but then that still detracts from you from achieving your optimal experience of watching anime or reading manga.
and is there a need to optimize it too? That's also another question too.
I guess in a sense it's you spend time doing something because you want to enjoy it. You want to get a sense of fulfillment and happiness out of it. It's hard. It's always going to be very subjective.
Yeah,
right?
it's a
What does-
multifaceted problem too. Yeah,
Maybe someone doesn't do something just purely for enjoyment. You might just be like let's say like food, for example. For me, whenever I want to go and eat, I want to be able to eat the best thing I can get, at least to my standards, and I want to enjoy it. But then there's also going to be like 50-60% of the time where I'm like, I can't be fucked. I'm just going to eat a bowl of noodles or I'm going to get a sandwich.
I just want to get full.
Yeah. If it tastes good, great. Right, and don't get it twisted either. If you listen to this, I truly put a lot of importance on food, but I will also be the first to admit that 75% of the meals I eat, it's mainly just a matter of convenience.
Yeah, and I think when the convenience factor is a non-issue, then comes the issue of, well, then what do you pick?
Yeah.
And it is such a hard question to answer and also such an unimportant question to answer at the same time. It's one of those things where I really don't know where to start sometimes because my plan to watch list is going to be like 70% of my anime list, right? And I will never ever exhaust it ever, unless obviously I delete entries. But there is just going to be tons of shows where yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure I'll like it, but for example, take one for example. I think recently, as of recording, they announced that the Monogatari, not the Bakemonogatari, but the horror, I guess you can call it horror, right? The horror anime Monogatari is going to be on Netflix. First of all, that's awesome because that gives me an extra excuse to watch it. But here's the thing. I don't know if I ever will watch it. Or, let's say I do, I don't know if I will ever recommend someone to watch it.
And that's the thing I wanted to point out as well. I mean, this is not me doing a deep dive or like calling you out and whatnot, but I pulled up your Mal, right? Your profile.
Yeah.
And you were saying that like you got like a lot of stuff that's piling up on your on hold list, right? Well, you only have 56 series that are on your on hold. However,
it used to be like 15.
However, you have over 750 shows that are on your plan to watch. And
Yeah, I
that's
know.
kind of tying on the last thing you said, which is there's something I definitely want to watch. It's just a matter of when am I going to do it. Like,
Yeah, and then all of a sudden I watch Slow Start. Like, what the fuck? Not
There's-
slow
yeah.
loop, slow
Yeah.
start.
yeah,
And I finished it. And you're like, bro, why not watch like a Count of Monte Cristo, for example?
Yeah.
Why not watch
Dude,
shows
like-
that you know you will like?
dude, from the beginning of this podcast, we've been trying to figure out who and when are we gonna watch Gankutsuo, right? The County Monte Cristo. Like it has been.
We've been trying to force ourselves to put it on.
Yeah, it's been in every single like closet cleanup for like the beginning of this podcast.
We gave up. We gave up. I mean, yeah, it will come back again, I'm pretty sure. But like Gunslinger Girls, I really liked that show. I didn't finish it. There was like tons of shows where why not finish
I still
it?
haven't watched Jormungand.
Oh, I have not even watched the Violet Evergarden movie. It's on Netflix.
Yep.
It's there.
Yep.
You want me to click a couple of times and then I can watch it. I know I'm going to like it.
We still haven't watched Perfect Blue or Paprika.
The fuck are we doing? But at the same time,
Do you think it's because just we know that it's good, and that's what's delaying that
Yes.
that trigger?
yeah, I think part of it is we want to save it for a rainy day, but that it's like that whole video game syndrome of, oh, I'm playing Final Fantasy. I want to save the elixir, which gives you full health and full MP, but you don't use it ever,
Yep.
or you don't.
Yeah, 500 potions, 200 Phoenix Downs. Like you never know when you're gonna need them, and when you finish the game, it's like, oh, I guess I never needed them.
Or here, let me sell my antidote, or what was the needle, the one that gets rid of petrification?
Oh, I don't
It's,
remember.
it's like, oh, I will never fucking eat this ever again. Then you fucking fight a Medusa, and then you're like, well, shit.
Reload, last save.
Yeah, but you could reload last save, but you can't reload yesterday in real time
Yeah.
and then relive that day again. Of course, hindsight is 2020, but we keep talking about anime being more accessible, more popular, more ingrained into everyday society, whereas Asian and in Western world. But along the same lines, I can very much anticipate a scenario where, we would talk to a friend and they'll be like, yo, Bleach 1,000-Year Blood War is fucking phenomenal. Or, hey, X and Y show is really good. And maybe it is really good. But we're just like, yeah, but, I still have yet to watch, X, Y, and Z show. Kind of want to finish that first. When will I get to it? I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Or, hey, that XYZ harem show, that is kind of good. Like, I haven't finished Domestic Girlfriend. How many times have I fucking started watching and also started reading Domestic Girlfriend from eons back based off of your recommendation and then choose not to? Because not because I don't like it, but because I just kind of stray off and do something else.
Yeah.
Dorohedoro is a good example. How the fuck? I mean, I guess part of this BP is to call me out on all these things, but legitimately,
I mean, how long have you been calling me to watch fucking Jormungand, and I haven't pulled the trigger? It's been like almost a year now,
yeah.
right? So I mean, the blame is on both sides. I mean, to quote like P.T. Barnum, like convenience and comfort is the enemy of progress, and that's where we are at right now. We
Yeah.
are sitting in a comfy ass chair with screens ready to load up Crunchyroll, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, whatever platform we want. All we need to just either have subscriptions to it or subscribe to them, and then we can start watching shit. But I'm just gonna go back and watch Vinland Saga because that's what I've been watching. That's what I really, really like. You're going to go back to reading XYZ manga because, well, this is something that I like to read on my commutes. And
how many girl love Yuri manga have I read in like the past 2 years that I will never, ever mention ever on this podcast because I don't feel the need to?
But you have read like dozens of them, like unmentioned in the podcast, but you still do them.
And rank them, yeah.
Because,
and it's just
because it's convenient and it's comforting for you.
And I just kind of want to see, what does this one bring to the table, right? But and also same thing with isekais too. How if you thought like anime isekais is a dime a dozen, wait till you get to the mangas and even more so the light novels. That is crazy hard in terms of the sheer quantity and quality of some of them too, lack thereof for a lot of them, right?
You throw a Chainsaw Man at me, you throw a Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 at me, okay, I'm ready to watch them. But once you mention there is a slice of life agriculture or food/gourmet based series, everything doesn't fucking matter anymore. I'm watching that. Why? Because I like that shit. Is it meaningful to me? Probably not, because I've watched a lot of that shit already, but I like it, and that's the most important thing. But when it comes to talking about how to sort of tackle the whole on hold slash plan to watch slash read dilemma, I think that it's gamification. Right,
Right.
you look at the progress chart that you have on these series, like, oh, I'm 6 out of 13. I only really need to watch another 7 series, and then some episodes, and then I'm done. I can finally log it and be done with it. That's the little soft achievement I got.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes what I do.
Well, yeah, well, good luck, by the way, with manga because everything is always not canceled or canceled very late.
Or it might not be on Shonen Jump Plus. It might not be on Manga Plus. You have to start buying stuff, and then you have to start putting money into more of the volumes that you want to
the
finish to complete.
Azukis, if you will, and so on and so forth.
Like, do you know how much money I've spent just reading JoJo? None, because I'm lucky that it's all free on fucking Manga Plus. But once I start wanting to like read up on Steel Ball Run, JoJo Lion, or JoJo Lands, then like, okay, well, I don't want to spend the money, or if I do, then I'll spend it incrementally, and who knows when I'll be done reading that shit.
I knew that JoJo would be an interesting ride, but it wasn't until we did the Gotta Watch Them All series that it just so happened that we forced my cards to be like, all right, I'll give JoJo a shot, and I'm fucking loving it. But it took forever for me to get to that point where I'm like, all right, now's the time to sit down and do it, because it's always easy to delay, to prolong, to procrastinate. But the thing is with JoJo, for example, or with the Monogatari, not Bakemonogatari, again, the horror show, or even with Jormungand, I would consider those shows way, way above average in terms of your typical anime show. But on the other side, you get a lot of really cheaply made shows that satiate your appetite. But what about not the mid, because usually, and we've gone on for a BP on it, mid kind of gives this a negative connotation. But what about the shows that are not necessarily mid in terms of quality, but mid in terms of your rate of return?
They'll be good in the moment, but they won't be memorable. All right, it's just very much like you just watch it, you're going through the motions, and then when you're done, you're like, okay, I guess that was time spent, but not time well spent.
Yeah. And I don't know what to do about it because our time is finite. The number of stuff that we would like to watch and could watch will ever so increase all the time. Of course, then you could say, well, then, Jason, fucking don't think about it then. At that point, you'll never overcome this mountain of stuff because they'll always add on, right? Forget about anime and manga. Live action is the same thing. How many shows are there by whoever studio or whatever channel production company that you want to watch that you have just piled on, just like the video games, too?
Well, let me ask you this. How badly are you affected by FOMO? Let's say like all your friends have just gone to watch Suzume. Even me, right? You're the only one who hasn't watched it. And do you feel that at that point you're like more obliged to be like, okay, since everyone's watched it, I totally gotta watch it. I don't want to be the only one that didn't watch it. Or you to be like, okay. I guess I'll watch it at a later point. You guys enjoyed it? Oh, you guys liked it? Cool. They'll probably enjoy it in like 5-6 months time when it's streaming.
I would say not a lot.
Yeah, see? Like, FOMO doesn't hit me as hard anymore now, where it's like, of course, everybody on the fucking internet won't shut up about Demon Slayer and Chainsaw Man.
In fact, that would turn me off.
Yeah.
Or the fact that everyone has watched it except for me would also turn me off, because then I'll be like, well, what's the point? You guys are all talking about it.
But then that's also a detriment that adds onto the, will we ever be able to tackle this monster, which is the on-hold / plan to read and plan to watch? Because yes, for sure. I fucking hate it when people won't stop hyping up. But then again, like, hypocritical. I hype shows too. But there's a point when you start like hearing more and more about a certain series that it starts to put you off more about it. Maybe Chainsaw Man is not the right example because we already read it. But because of the fact that like people just won't stop talking about XYZ, we're just like, okay, we know enough people really enjoy this shit. Let's just wait till the hype has died down a bit, and when we're ready to check it out, sure.
I think Bocchi the Rock is going to be one of the best animes of last year. I think that is without a doubt. But I also can't really say that is a show that everyone must watch. I could advocate for it, but I just feel like there's just... I would say for you, Will, I would say you would want to watch Jormungand over Bocchi the Rock in terms of just principle in my mind.
Or maybe like one that is going to contest the best anime of last year. Do you think someone would pick Bocchi the Rock over Bleach 1000 Year Blood War?
Yeah, I think there is a very good chance that is going to happen, right?
But it hasn't. For the most part, there's more people who talk about Bleach 1000 Year Blood War, and it's because of the fact that people know how good Bleach is. But you know how good Bocchi the Rock is. And of course, you're going to be the one that tries to get people on that Bocchi train.
Yeah, and the internet too, right?
The scores, the stats prove it. But you can't also then argue that you can get people to start watching more of Bocchi over Bleach when the inverse has been happening. And that's kind of what happens to me, too. Like, you can't convince me of watching something over Vinland Saga for this season because I really fucking love Vinland Saga. You know?
Right, but in the argument for both Bleach and Bocchi the Rock, they are either highly rated or massively popular in the form of Bleach, right? But let's take a show that I think would be a decent example of what I'm trying to say. Will, you like Slow Loop a lot, right?
Yeah.
The fly fishing show?
Yeah. But if it wasn't for the fact that I do it for the podcast, I probably wouldn't have watched it.
Yes, I also agree. I also would have either watched 1 or 2 episodes or dropped it.
It would be the same with how a realist hero rebuilt the kingdom, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good example for me, which is I kind of want to watch it. I really do want to watch it. I'm not trying to, downplay that, but I also kind of is iffy about it in the sense that, like, I kind of want to finish, all these shows too.
And so therefore it's lower in the priority, but it's still there. It's still in the back of your mind. It's like, well, if there's someone that's vouching enough for this show, then maybe there's something to be enjoyed for me.
I kind of want to see what Police in the Pod
plays out, right? When you actually finish the thing,
yeah,
right?
But I'm not going to watch it, really. I kind of do, but I kind of don't, And then that comes into, okay, so then you might say, for playing devil's advocate, like, hey, Jason, Will, bruh, so who cares if you feel guilty about not consuming this show over that show, or hey, you have analysis paralysis, first world problems in finding a show that you want to watch. But when it is people's livelihood on the line, when you need to be able to provide content, for example, for us as podcasters, there is automatically a sense of whether it is responsibility as an animator or, a producer or director, or just as a studio head, as well as us and as other YouTubers, NATubers. There's only so much you can consume that either it is an underdog, or you're saying a hot take with an overhyped show, or critical or popular choice. There are shows that fit in none of these categories that should be okay, but no one will ever watch it. And they're just there to, like, add on to, hey, we have over 50 shows airing this season. Come watch it. Simulcast. Oh, hey, what's up?
I remember when I first started getting back into anime, the first thing I did was load up the top 100 anime series on my anime list and tried the best I could to go through every single one of them. And I probably have gone through a majority of them. But there's still some series that I still haven't pulled the trigger on. And the reason for that is because it's, again, that time commitment versus the return on investment. Like, I don't know if me going into watching all of Gintama is going to be the best thing I can do. Even though what I've watched up till now has been fucking amazing. I fucking love watching Gintama, but I haven't watched anything. I've watched 200 episodes. There's still another 400 to go.
And there could be, not could be. There has to be a scenario where you will advocate for a show, won't shut up about it. It may not be the one that people like realize right away that's on their radar, but you are being like, guys, hear me out. Like, please, like, trust me on this. This show is not is worth your time. But then I'll be like, well, what about these other shows that I've yet to watch? And you'll be like, yeah, well, but, Ayawashi, though, like, it talks about the human condition and stuff like that, and also about how awesome soccer is and how sometimes painful that journey is. And I'm like, yeah, well, but, like, and then
I've already experienced that with Haikyuu.
And then you'll be like, no.
Basket.
You like Welcome to the Ballroom, Jason, right? Well, what about Dance Dance Dancer? And I'm like, yeah.
And the inverse is there too, right? Like, I fucking love Dance Dance Dancer. You really fucking love Welcome to the Ballroom. Why haven't we swapped around and watched the other shows?
And there could be a scenario where we do that, but I think this is more of a discussion than us really finding a solution, because I honestly don't think there is.
Otherwise, you wouldn't have like almost 800 entries on your plan to watch, right? Like, I think for me, I've got like several hundred as well.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that I am the majority of people where I use my plan to watch as more of like a to keep tabs on, or when I do want to pull the trigger on one of these shows, I can just go straight to that. Some people, their plan to watch list is minuscule because those are, I literally want to watch these 4 or 10 shows and I won't add any more. Maybe like an own personal rule,
or for them, it's like, I just don't put any entry whatsoever until I'm actually ready to start watching something.
Right.
Everyone has their own way of using
the next step up, right?
Like for me, it's like I have 182 shows on my watching. All of them are technically on hold.
And to be fair, one of the reasons why we do the anime closet cleanup as kind of an ongoing segment is because we want to tie together all these plan to watch shows that have no real common mutual theme or anything like that.
Even then, we're only really going through like 3, maybe 4 series each time we do a closet cleanup.
And how many do we add? I add a lot more.
We do like what? Like a closet cleanup like twice every year. Right? So
yeah.
That's 8 out of your 792 plan to watches. How you have to go through 100 years before you're even done doing that, and that's not even like factoring in that you could possibly also just do your own cleaning of your plan to watches on the side, right? So maybe you're watching 10 additional shows, but even then, right? Like, the more you start watching stuff, the more you start getting fatigued, and then when you think you've done some progress to it, a new season's upon us, a new show hotly anticipated is coming out, and you're like, fuck everything, I'm gonna drop all this shit and I'm only gonna watch that.
Right. And
it's a vicious cycle. It
just
never ends.
And of course, I think at the end of the day, this is only a problem in terms of the consumer, i.e. in this case you and I. But our decision to consume a certain show actually can be, extrapolated, exaggerated into a lot of people, which then means that it can have consequences for the future of a certain property or the future of a certain animation studio or just trends in general. I think there are so many shows where we were like, hey, this anime should get a second season. It needs to fucking get a second season. For example, one of my most favorite shoujo Yuri mangas of all time is Bloom Into You. I think no one will ever dispute the fact that Bloom Into You is the cream of the crop in terms of girl love manga. It did get an anime, and I like the anime a lot. I don't think it will ever get a second season or third season or whatever. And you could argue, well, maybe that's because the whole point is to serve as advertisement for the manga itself.
Or the original source in general. Yeah.
Absolutely, right? But there comes a point where I just feel like there must be a decision that led to not having a season 2.
Well, do you feel fatigued from watching anime at all? Because think about it this way.
I mean, that's a separate question, right?
But I think it also plays into perhaps maybe like the rates of consumption that we have for anime and manga. Because you've got well over 500 completed shows on your list. I've got around 300. You think about like how many of those are movies. You take those out, and then you just multiply it by 25 minutes. That's a lot of watch time for anime, and maybe even more so for manga. So I think that like after a while, it's like. It's not so much that like we've achieved so much already, and there's so much more that we can go on to do. But I think it's just the fact that sometimes it's when you start watching something, you're like, yeah, it's kind of similar to what I watched already, or it's like I kind of already knew what to expect there, and therefore it's not as much of a drive for you to continue doing it because you've done it before. You know where I'm going with that?
I am of an exception for sure, where I would say 90 to 95% of what I consume is anime and manga centric.
Yep.
Is it by choice? Partially, yes. I think the other thing is, I think lately, of course, there's definitely going to be shows that are worth watching. Live action shows. Plenty, even. But it's just one of those things where I just kind of not that fussed about it. Just like how there are tons of video games came out since, I think Resident Evil 3 Remake or Biohazard 3 Remake was the last video game that I physically bought. And my PS4 is right now, like, in my closet, haven't been used in, like, 2 years because it just piles on. And for fuck's sake, Dead Space Remake looks fucking amazing. It looks awesome. I love it. I know I will love it. But I'm just like, nah, you know what? It's fine. And I think that the question of whether or not we all have... Wait, so the question is... Sorry, I kind of blanked out ever so slightly. So your question...
Do you ever feel tired from watching anime and manga or reading manga?
I mean, we get burned out. I mean, we've had that phase even within the duration of GAP being established, right?
You remember the times before, like, I think this was like in the midst of COVID when we were like very much working from home, or like we just had more time like online, right? And there'd be days where I would be you and I would be texting back and forth. It's like, oh, what did you do today? It's like, oh, I watched like 24 episodes of anime. What the fuck? It's like, yeah, I finished this series and that series. I've caught up to the seasonals, and you're like, oh wow, damn, okay. Well, I just read like 8 volumes of manga, and I'm also about to start watching this.
Oh yeah, Dorohedoro is fucking dope, Jason. Oh, I'm just binging all of Domekano, and I'm just like, yeah, but Will, we need to fucking watch X, Y, and Z show for the podcast. Yeah. But you're like, yeah, but this is fucking dope, and I'm not denying that, by the way.
But there were also times where it's like, there's this topic coming up. Okay, I'm gonna watch every single thing on. Like, for example, we were doing the studio analyses.
Yeah, we used to go hardcore, almost to the point of obsession.
Like, I would try and watch every single fucking Madhouse, KyoAni. Like, damn, I watched like 90% of KyoAni's catalog.
Like, we did ourselves to death there. But okay, let's say we don't have a podcast.
We take away the podcast part, right? Would I have ever watched Clannad?
No.
You know, probably not. I know it's good, and it's like enough people are also the same thing as well. Where it's like, yeah, it was a worthy journey, and for sure it was super emotional. But honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that so many people wouldn't stop talking about it, or it wasn't for the fact that like it's so highly acclaimed on my anime list, I probably wouldn't have picked it up. That's probably what it was for me too. It's like I can see that Clannad After Story is like one of the best anime seasons of all time, but was I really going to put myself through 24 episodes of mediocrity from Clannad? No, I wasn't going to do that. It was only because of the fact that we were doing KyoAni that, yeah, I had to force myself to watch it. And I'm thankful that I did, but I don't think I would have missed out all that much if I didn't watch it. This is not to slate Clannad either. I do love the series a lot. But it did require a lot of push and shove for me to even get started in the first place.
So, do you think there will ever come a time when shows that are above average but not quote-unquote mandatory viewing or quote-unquote mandatory reading in terms of manga or light novels for that matter will ever have its own place? Of course it will have its own niche, but...
Well, that's why you have like series that have like a 6.5 or 6.6 on my anime list and get a second season. Like,
yeah, but maybe it's because of like...
I'm Standing on a Million Lives. Like that was trash, but it somehow got a second season.
But I would argue that for some of those, obviously not all of those, there's like either merchandise or they're based off of a toy line or the manga is really popular, so people watched it. I mean, I'm sure that someone has crunched the numbers such that they warranted a second or third season, right? So there are these exceptions or these plethora of anime and mangas that
or it's just series that we just truly don't understand, and despite the negative scores, there's still a lot of people in that fan base that are going to continue pumping those numbers, and so therefore, like, I guess it has a right to exist. It's just in the end, like, we're thinking more about ourselves, about our own time, not anyone else's time, right? I think that there's going to be like a good amount of people that would just spend all the time they could watching anime. It doesn't matter what it is. They'll just watch it. And it might just be the fact that they've already watched all the quote unquote good shit in the first place and just watch anything, because they might be like, "Oh, I'll spend time to watch 10 series and maybe one of them will be good." Like, you need like a series of mistakes before you achieve perfection. And that might be the approach they go for. I want to be a little bit more reserved in the sense that, like, I don't want to just constantly step on landmines. I want to be able to find that bomb straight away. Just like, this is it. This is where I'm going to dedicate my time, and I don't need to have to trial and error my way to get there.
Do you think that has a bearing on the industry?
Not necessarily. Again, because this is just like for myself, right? I am like one individual amongst millions or even billions of anime and manga consumers. And if there's even like maybe like 5 to 10% of people that are just like me, that want to preserve as much time as possible focusing on the good shit, I still think that there is a place for mediocre or mid shows to exist. And it's just because of the fact that you want to give people choice. Whether or not the people take that choice, it doesn't really matter so much, because you could pump out 5 bad things, nobody picks it up, but then you put out that one good thing. Okay, cool, this thing works. We're going to pump out 5 more things that are similar to that one good thing that worked. Doesn't work out. And then you just rinse and repeat.
So is it kind of like, hey, there's a 7-Eleven on this side of the street and that side of the street, but all that does is it occupies the space that maybe,
think about it this way.
Mm-hmm.
The iPhone, right? We have the iPhone 13, right?
I don't have it, but you have it, right?
I don't. I have a Samsung.
Okay, well, there you go.
But which iPhone do you have?
12.
Yeah. Have the upcoming, like, have 13 and the 14 been compelling enough for you to, pull the trigger and upgrade?
Yeah, but I'm not the type of person that would buy a phone like every year, every other year.
And that's what's that's what the trend has been going through now. There's been fewer and fewer people that are buying new phones every single year. But when it's because of the fact as well that, like, the phones between like iPhone 12, 13, and 14, very incremental upgrades, not a whole lot.
But
same
the M1 laptops, though, on Mac,
that was a big one, because the old chips, the old Intel based ones, slowly but surely, like, decreasing in sales. Then M1 came out and sales fucking blew up. It's going to be the same thing again with the iPhone 15 if they make any drastic changes to it. And it's because it took a while for R&D to basically pump out something that worked consistently, and then they take a big risk and they show it off to people and they get enough people hooked onto it. But it's the same way with anime and manga.
But using your Apple brand as an analogy, right? With the M1 chips, it is more of an easy sell to someone that is, it's a large incremental one, right? Or, for example, with an iPhone, you could say that, hey, it's another iteration. It's a dime a dozen, but hey, it's the thing that you know and love. It's just the next version of. But what about something like the iWatch, for example? I know we're kind of talking a lot about Apple here, but I'm just using that as an example, where the iWatch is, it's kind of there. It is kind of useful for you, potentially.
But I don't know that many people who have one.
Exactly. So, using that analogy, when would you think there would be the anime or manga equivalent of the iWatch? Because maybe some people swear on their life that they will not live without it. And you get plenty of people, such as me, who doesn't really care for it, whether it exists or not. But it puts resources away from potentially focusing on other products, just like how resources, and there'll be losers who spend time and by losers I mean winners and losers, not saying like you suck if you get the iWatch, but I meant like the amount of time that you bought into it, the one that you're waiting for the next iteration, you're waiting for the next season of that anime, or when you had to shut that product line down because no one is buying it, but you really thought it was really good.
I mean, you just have to witness the generational change. We talked about this in terms of genre defining like decades, right? In terms of the decade defining genres, in terms of like these were the things that people loved watching during these 10 years, and in the next 10 years these were you're going to start seeing a change in a couple years time when people don't care as much about shonen. I don't know if that will happen, but it may. Isekais might start tapering off again. All of a sudden sports comes back, or mechas come back and whatnot. You never know. I think it's hard to really say that like, oh, of course, okay, anything that Mappa produces is like the M1, M2, M3, whatever chip, and then this studio or that genre
Studio
or
Mother.
this series. Okay, Studio Mother. And Studio Mother is the Apple Watch.
Or what about Brain Space? How about Brain Space? Brain Space is, I think, a studio that produces good work, but not every single one of them are bangers, but not every single one of them are like duds either.
I was actually going to say Science Saru was the Apple Watch. Because when they first came out, it was revolutionary, but then it's slowly been kind of...
You're being a bit too harsh on the monkeys,
but you know
Science Saru.
But you know what I'm going with this, right? Because there's always going to be lulls in terms of you captivating people's attention for certain things. Because
you just got burned by Yuri Deco.
Yeah. Okay, that's it. But that's still like something that is going to leave a sore note for a long time. And I feel that that's just what's going to happen. You're always going to have a series, a studio, a genre that remains at the very top, will always capture your attention until it doesn't. And then something else is going to take its spot instead. For a long, 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 long time, JC Staff was fucking great. Madhouse was fucking great. I mean... How much have we really heard about Ufotable now, other than, oh, they're that studio that does Demon Slayer? It's great work, but outside of Demon Slayer, do you really know all that much about Ufotable now?
I mean, when is their next Fate thing?
Yeah, that's it. But even all the Fate stuff now is not even done by Ufotable. It's done by, I think Fate Apocrypha was done by A1 Pictures, right? So you're going to go through phases now where at some point Mappa is no longer going to be... I mean, like, shit, we wouldn't stop talking about Wit because Attack on Titan. Now Mappa's like at the fucking top of the mountain. Who's going to be the next one to dethrone Mappa? It just basically depends on how consistent Mappa is and whether they're able to actually continually churn out banger after banger after banger. I mean, shit, dude. They got AOT final season. They had fucking Jujutsu Kaisen, Chainsaw Man, and now Hell's Paradise. Can they keep that train going, or are they going to slip and then someone goes up and takes that spot? Will Wit go back up to the top? Will JC Staff just all of a sudden be like the biggest in terms of rom-coms, and that's what everybody seems to really love watching now?
It's a good point. I just feel that lately, especially lately, due to my time has been more limited than the usual, I've realized that either I watch some generic shit that I know I will kind of like, but not really, or at least I won't love it, but I like it, or there are all these shows that are piling on that are must watches that I just either finish bit by bit or I just don't finish and drop it, and I feel really guilty about that.
I mean, we talked about this in episode 53, right? Hell's Paradise, rightfully so, super, super hyped, got good acclaim, loads of members on my list are waiting to watch it. Are you dying to watch it?
Nah.
Right? It's a big Mappa production, but you also just know it's like, I want to try and see if I can spend my time wisely by finding that gem in the dirt and focus on that, because you never know. You might just all of a sudden sit down and just be like, you know what? Instead of watching that, I'll watch this instead. I'll watch this little known show called Bocchi the Rock. And it turned out to be one of the greatest journeys you ever did, because it wasn't all that well known. until all of a sudden it became known, and it became known that it was a very good show, so good that it's in the top 50 of all time on my
Yeah,
anime
but
list.
what happens when you don't get a Bocchi the Rock, or you don't get something popular like Vinland Saga? You get something like
A slow loop.
yes,
Again, you have to make a lot of mistakes along the way to be able to find that one good thing. But because of the fact that it's the mistake, you want to be more careful with how you go about doing your things, and that's what delays us from actually picking up our plan to watches, our like removing something from the on hold and putting it onto the watching.
or dropped.
We want to be careful with how we go about navigating this massive landscape of anime and manga now.
And I just feel like at a certain point, the number of, people in this, pool of weebs is going to either stagnate or slow down. But yet people, especially if you look at nowadays, the tech industry in the US has either let go, laid off, or fired a lot of people. But that is kind of a result of during COVID, everyone received a boom because everyone was staying indoors. And I'm just saying that at what point, or is it even a problem because that's just a natural way of things where
It is. I mean, it's a natural correction of things,
right.
for sure.
So, of course, you could say, well, anime studios, if you don't produce a good work or a popular work, you're going to get shut down. I know that that's a fact of life, just like how there's going to be winners and losers. I just feel like, well, why would you want to put a gamble on something that you know has a tough chance of ever either getting a profit or breaking even, which in many cases is worse because
And that's why we're very careful with this limited commodity, which is time, right? We aren't going to be as gung ho as we used to be. For sure, when we were younger, when we were still in school, we were a lot more carefree. We had a lot more time that we could spend completely unpredictably and just pick a show and say, "Oh, I'll watch all 12 episodes because I got nothing better to do." Now, on the other hand, you don't want to be as risky with that time. You want to be able to at least have a more calculated approach to how you go about picking shows. And by the time you do pick a show, a new season's rolled out. I mean, shit. Like I thought I'd be done with Ayawashi and Summertime Render by now. It's been a year.
And I want to watch Summertime Render so badly. So
It's really fucking good. But
Yeah.
but I know that too. I'm like 15 episodes in out of 25. I still haven't watched the last 10 episodes.
yeah, it's just there. Obviously, this is a problem that is a non-issue for a lot of people, and it's kind of like first world problems, right? I understand that. I guess what I'm trying to have a conversation about, Will, and obviously we have talked quite a bit about it, is maybe it's not that big of a deal that we did not consume, the next generic isekai anime. Maybe it's okay. Maybe it's also okay that the studio that made this mediocre isekai is going to get shut down. But when it is your life on the line, your livelihood on the line, and obviously, like, if those major popular properties are always going to gun for the most prestigious, animation studio to animate it, well, think about how many mangas are just not the cream of the crop, not so shitty that it'll get canceled, but it's just kind of treading along. When do they get the time to shine? Or maybe the whole point is, by definition, they don't get the time to shine. And I just feel that it is a very tough situation because, well, are you going to not try?
Well, I guess it's just basically like, are you trying to, like, at least in the context of food, do you want every one of your meals to be like a Michelin-starred experience? Do you want it to be like the cream of the crop every single time? Or are you willing to have a couple meals, maybe more often than not, of just, a regular sandwich, like a very cheap, like fast food meal? Just because, dude, like that's pretty much how it goes now. It's really hard to just curate your time spent on watching anime and only watching the best stuff because, again, subjective, right? What counts as best? What counts as the correct anime for you to watch? And even then, there is a finite amount of that stuff that you want to watch and you think is the best thing ever. And then you get left with all this other shit that, okay, now I do have time for it, but it's not going to be the same enjoyable experience as, say, watching, in my opinion, Tokyo Ghoul, or watching Death Parade, right? Or even like watching fucking Sword Art Online or Gintama or whatnot. I did commit the time to watching it, and I thoroughly enjoyed all those things. Maybe not so much Sword Art Online, but then now it's like, okay, well, how about maybe I get around to watching, I guess, Inspector, or watching Adachi, or watching this and watching that. It's just hard to be able to equate my time spent trying to pick out an unknown and enjoy it than spending time knowing that I'm going to be consuming a banger. And even then, consuming bangers, it might not be as simple as just pressing play. Because if that's the point, then we would have finished watching all the top 50 by now.
Yeah, I think there is a good argument to be like, hey, I'm not really doing anything at the moment, but I kind of don't want to focus solely on watching something. So I just have something being put on the background. How many times have you or I or have heard or even do this, right? Or how about, we love TV shows, but I'd rather put on a rerun of Bones or a rerun of Brooklyn Nine-Nine and be okay with it when I could be consuming, the Game of Thrones, the Dragon spinoff or whatever, for example.
House of Dragons. Yeah.
House of Dragons, right?
Which I haven't watched.
I haven't watched either. And I feel like on one hand, there's something wrong with me on that. On the other hand, it's like, who fucking cares?
Like, how many times have I told you Steins Gate's fucking awesome?
I wanted to talk about that too. Like, what the fuck, Jason? Right? But with Steins Gate, I feel like it's going to be this critical darling that, as you said, because we know it's good or I know it's good, I just never watch it. I guess, we're going in all sorts of different directions, which is like the whole point of this BP. But when something is outstanding critically or popular, I feel like they have their niche. When something is extremely bad, comically bad, they will have their niche. When it's something cultured or degenerate, is an easy way to convince someone whether they like that or not. But there is like this like mid B tier where I just don't know who's it for. And maybe obviously they might have their own audience. But if I were to look at the whole weebdom as a whole, it's almost for no one. And I think that problem is ever going to increase with the use of AI, online platforms, self-publishing. That gulf of sheer amount of stuff is just going to be massive.
And that it's because of how massive it is no matter how much guidance, no matter how much advice you get from people, whether it's friends, family, whether it's from like creators, like,
or the Good Anime Palette podcast.
Or even the podcast, right? Like, it's still up to that person, whether it be you, Jason, whether it be me, Will, or someone else is listening to this. It's up to you to navigate this fucking massive world, and nobody can ever give you a definitive answer of how to go about watching your anime.
Yeah, especially when it's an art form. So therefore, at a certain point, it's subjective, right? I mean, you could say, okay, the animation is stilted, or there is no frames of animation. Like, that is, you could say, in a more definitive way at least, it's a lesser anime comparatively to, something that is more fluid, something that is less frames per second.
Like, we can all agree that Rested Armors is one of the worst anime series of all time.
But people watch it, and we watched it kind of ironically.
Yeah.
We gave it the time of day.
And there's also a group of people that watch it unironically. Otherwise, it wouldn't have an actual like score above a 4. Oh, no, above a 3. Again, we're doing another BP where like we pose a problem, a question, and we don't really have an answer for it. And that's the whole point in doing these particular kinds of BPs. We aren't trying to highlight an issue and provide a resolution. No, like this is
We're just trying to highlight an issue and talk about it.
yeah,
right?
It's always going to be like a struggle to look at your anime list and then look at my anime list.
Yeah. I made that mistake earlier.
And then like straight up just think, yeah, I'm going to tackle this show, that show, this show, that show. No, you could have a whole fucking checklist to do like throughout your whole day, and you're not going to check every single one of them consistently.
And you or your friends or us can tell you must have to watch the show. In fact, we usually do that all the damn time, but we can only lead you to the lake. It is only up to you whether or not you drink the water that is in the lake or not. And to me, when the lake becomes a fucking ocean, it is really hard to parse out which sections are worth drinking and which sections are not. And almost it doesn't matter as long as you're drinking it. But who am I to tell you how to do things, Will? Yeah. Who am I to tell you, dear listeners, how to do things?
All we can do is just tell you to, tune into the next episode of the GAP. That's basically it, really.
And please don't touch grass, because then that means you have less time watching anime and reading manga.
There's water in your house. You don't have to go to the fucking lake to do that. Just stay indoors and watch anime, because that's something that we're struggling to do on a consistent basis.
Just don't be as useless as Aqua, right?
Man.
Just do something. How about this? Let's end on that note. You don't have to watch the best show or the worst show or read the hottest, latest, greatest thing. Just do it. It doesn't matter what it is. We might judge you. You might judge yourself. But as long as you're consuming the thing that you love, who are we to say, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I don't think I could put it any other way than just do it.
And just like Shia LaBeouf,
I don't know. The beef.
Just like beef, you can always meet us through digital electronic means through our email, gapalette@gmail.com. That's GAPALETTE@gmail.com, all lowercase, all one word. Would you prefer eating poultry? Because you can use the Twitter handle @PalletGood. That's capital P and capital G, all one word. Or maybe, you know what? You like bugs, because you can always reach our website, www.goodanimepalette.com, all lowercase, all one word. You can probably eat our notes on the music credits for this episode, because our intro music is Dylan's Overthinking by Dylan Sitz.
That is a sweet, sweet melody.
And our outro music is I Don't Mind, the instrumental version by Particle House.
Also a sweet, sweet melody.
You can always support our music artists that we feature by listening to them on Spotify, Apple Music, and other music listening platforms. And our royalty-free music was provided by Epidemic Sound. Just like how anime and manga can spread far and wide, you can always use the Epidemic Sound service by signing up using our referral link in the show description. Terms and conditions apply.
Man, I was thinking that we were just talking about there's not much time. We can go just watch anime. Anime is good. And now I'm left feeling empty and depressed.
Like existential crisis.
You just broke me too. Now it's just more like, wow, I really have not been we're running a fucking anime podcast and we're not watching any anime because we can't bring ourselves to get around to actually turning on our computers and loading up Netflix or Crunchyroll.
Okay, to be fair, we do watch a lot.
A lot.
A shit ton.
But it's also hard to keep it consistent,
I don't know anybody else minus I don't know anybody else personally that has watched or read
nearly as much as we have, right?
Yeah. And at the consistent basis. Yeah, we have our on and off days, right? But
weeks sometimes as well.
Yeah, but for better or for worse, anime and manga is here to stay. And I love anime and manga. Will?
Yeah, no idea when this is going to release, but best believe we will have watched Oshinoko. We will have watched Hell's Paradise. We will have watched whatever else is coming out in spring. God damn it, this releases in summer, then we got even more shit to look forward to. Oh my god, this never ends. No. Don't look up what's happening in summer. I don't want to
No,
know
no, no.
what shows are coming
I'm
up.
looking at when we might potentially release this.
Okay. Yeah. I guess it doesn't really matter when this does get released because the point is still clear that there is so much goddamn anime and manga out there, and there's not enough time to consume it all. But you're gonna do that shit anyway because anime and manga are fucking awesome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What she said, he said, they said, he said, we said.
What are the other?
Pronouns?
Yeah.
I don't fucking know. Are you searching?